Hello everyone, Mr. Drybones here, and today I'm taking a look at Panzer Paladin. Panzer Paladin was released by Tribute last week for the Nintendo Switch and Windows via Steam, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Nintendo Switch version. I'm going to be doing this review a bit differently than I have done the others, so let's see how this works out. Let's go ahead and jump into Panzer Paladin. So what's the story and how long is the game? I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. Some weapons fell down from the sky, and that makes monsters and demons appear through occult portals. There are some unanswered questions by the game's end, but I suppose that leaves the door open for a sequel or for a prequel. Like many games, it's a serviceable story that works for the medium. As for the game's length, it took me about 9 hours to finish the game on a normal difficulty playthrough. So, how are the graphics? The graphics are great. You can see on screen for yourself as I play the game, but the game captures the modern 8-bit look as well as any of its contemporaries like Blaster Master Zero or Shovel Knight do. Grit, the mech, looks and moves uniquely, while Flame Grit's pilot is small but remains detailed enough to make out her moves. The enemies also look great and move with as much detail as the heroes do. The bosses in particular are big and fairly expressive. I say expressive because the enemies telegraph their attacks so brazenly that you can easily dodge or counter them if you're paying attention. So, how are the controls then? The controls are tight and responsive, but not without issue. You have a standard attack and you have a shield to block projectiles. You can even parry if you get the timing down. There's also a backstep to move quickly away from danger, but I personally didn't use it all that much. It all works well enough, and you can attack left, right, up, or duck and stab. There's also a double jump by thrusting up during a jump. However, the thrust can be a bit of a problem as Grit holds his blade slightly opposite the way he's facing. In other words, if you're facing right and thrust the blade up, it'll be slightly to the left of center, making it easy to bump into an enemy when you're doing an upward attack. It's a minor nuisance, but I took a lot of accidental hits because I double jumped into an enemy because the blade was slightly off center. Then there's Flame the pilot. She controls largely the same way, except she's a bit more agile. She has a whip with a long range and still packs a strong punch against regular enemies, and she can even beat bosses. Her smaller hitbox also makes it easier to dodge attacks. She even hits enemies while her whip is winding up. If I have a problem with her, it's that her grappling hook doesn't work as well as it should, and it's very easy to mess up these jumps later on in the game. I'll talk about that more in a little bit. Does the game have any gimmicks? Yes, the main draw of the game is that they toss tons of weapons at you. You'll find them in walls, from beating enemies, and you always get a special one from beating a boss. These weapons differ mostly in range and appearance, but each one has its own type, such as a sword or a hammer. They also all have a special ability you can activate by holding down the Z, L, and ZR buttons. This breaks the weapon and gives you a power-up such as attack up, defense up, healing, the ability to shoot fireballs, and a few more. It works well and makes the game unique. Using the right buffs before a boss can really tip the battle in your favor. You also have to sacrifice one weapon to use the game's checkpoints. I'll talk about that more in a minute. In between stages, you can break down weapons to upgrade Grit. This upgrades his health, and you can only do it 5 times, but that's the only upgrading of Grit you can do. It's not bad, but I feel like they could have done a little bit more. Is there anything you didn't like about the game? Yes, I do have a few gripes, unfortunately. First, the most annoying thing to me is that each stage only has 2 checkpoints. They're always halfway into a level and before the boss. This is annoying because you can easily die and be sent back to the start of a stage. This is made worse because items and recharge stations you find during a level can only be used once. So if you use a recharge station to heal but die before reaching the checkpoint, sorry, back to the start of the level and the recharge station is gone until you get a game over. It doesn't help that these checkpoints are typically after a section where you must play as Flame, and her parts are typically littered with bottomless pits and one-hit kill spikes. In one stage in particular, there's an enemy waiting just off screen of a grappling hook section that will kill you if you hesitate on the jump. Worst of all, if you don't have Grit, you cannot use a checkpoint. So if you lose him before the boss and die during the boss, you have to go back to the halfway checkpoint. My only other major gripe is there is a Proto-Man-like enemy called the Horseman that you must fight in every stage right after the halfway checkpoint. By the 4th or 5th encounter, he is a chore to fight that just eats up your HP. However, he is pretty easy overall, and after those 4 or 5 encounters, you should have little trouble in beating him. Now, before we wrap up, let me play a couple of the game's songs. What are my final thoughts? Well, it's a good game, and I think it's worth a play. It looks good, it plays good, and it even has some fun set pieces. But it is very easy. Even the final boss is a cakewalk with the right buffs. All that said, yes, I recommend it, just not at full price. Wait for a sale. $10 to $15 is a sweet spot, and I definitely think you would get your money's worth. Thanks for watching. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, leave a comment, and subscribe. See you next game, everybody.